Hello, hello, and welcome to the User Research Strategist podcast. I am your host, Nikki, and I am joined here today by Brittany. Hi, Brittany. I'm super excited to have you on the pod because we're going to be talking about one of my favorite things in one of my favorite contexts, which is strategic research and like coming from your experience in a startup, which is totally fun and interesting environment to talk about strategic
Mhm.
research in. But before we dive into that awesome topic, do you mind just giving a quick introduction to our audience?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So, my name is Brittany Lang. I'm currently a research manager at a startup called Chorus Innovations. We work to provide innovative behavioral healthcare solutions to our clients who are in agencies, counties, and states across the United States. And my background actually is a combination of design and information science, if you're familiar. So, I have a degree in industrial design from the University of Oregon, go Ducks. And then I have a master's in information science from Michigan. And so my work combines, those two backgrounds quite intensely. I have worked in startups before. I have worked for nonprofits. I have worked in mid-sized companies. I have worked in an agency. I have worked for a Fortune 100 or big tech companies. And I've also worked in the capacity of an independent contributor and also a manager. I also, just being a manager, I really believe that research is like the heart of every successful business. And like, in that comes a lot of collaboration. And so I'm excited to dig more into that today. And just a little bit about me, like outside of the work environment. I really, I live in the Pacific Northwest in the United States. So I enjoy like hiking outdoors and wellness activities, spending time with friends. Any kind of social or community event these days is really great. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Amazing. Thank you. I love the Pacific Northwest. It's so stunning.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Come on over anytime.
I would love to. My sister actually lives on Bainbridge Island.
Oh,
So,
nice.
yeah. So she takes like a ferry to work every day.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah, it's a good time to come right now. All the flowers are blooming. It's a very like hopeful season for us because it rains most of the winter. So,
I feel you with the rain here in the
yeah.
UK. I'm just,
Y-
it's actually raining today. And I'm like, come on, like it's April. Like, let's just move on.
I know, that's what coffee's for.
Yeah, lots of it.
Hmm.
Amazing. Cool. So, thank you so much for that intro. And what I want to do before we really dive into this topic and kind of pulling on all your different experiences that you have is just set kind of like a grounding of what does strategic research actually mean to you, just as a general definition?
I think generally it means that we're being proactive and intentional in thinking about any type of research that we do. So, it's incorporating the business goals. My team right now sits under design. So, what are the design goals and like how are we supporting our team's broader goals? But yeah, just like thinking of where do we want to be a year from now, 3 years from now. Each project that we do, each body of research that we are supporting is going to get us there. And so I think like that vision is really important. And so I think about what that vision is that encompasses all those things when I'm thinking about being strategic.
Yeah, and I love what you said about being like proactive and intentional because a lot of the times we can feel really reactive as researchers, like people
Yeah.
just throwing requests and sometimes what I feel is beyond a request our way of like do this
Yeah.
survey. And so I'm curious, especially within the context of a startup because I know they can be quite fast paced.
Mhm.
How do you get into that proactive research rhythm and how do you help your team do that?
Yeah, this is a great question. So I think just being honest about what we're seeing and where we think the business is at. So, like right now, there's four researchers on my team, and we're all resourced across like different product lines, and we have like some different clients. And so we're sharing knowledge about what we're seeing and like, how our stakeholders are reacting to our work like quite often. And so there are some cases in which we have stakeholders who are really familiar with research and they're like, I know what I need, or I think I'm pretty sure, and I have a request, and they're ready and they're coming to us with requests. And then we have some other stakeholders and like partners, I would say, that are maybe unsure or they think they need it, but they don't know what they don't know. And so they're probably not going to say anything unless they feel like they really have a hold on, what we can do for them. And there's just a lot of variety in our environment right now. And so I've been encouraging my team to identify places where they think that, yeah, like we could have a study that would support this type of goal. Or, oh, I'm seeing, right now that, yeah, we're really not covering the full scope of users. And I think we could do some more work there. And just when I think of being proactive, it's like you've identified an opportunity and you're the research requester.
Mhm.
Like you can say and suggest a type of research, explain why. And if it's a proposal, it's like, there's no harm, no foul. Like if they say no and it doesn't work, it's like, you can advocate a little bit, but just start to kind of educate them and introduce them to the idea that you could do things for them. And almost always they're just like, oh, this is so great. I didn't know you could do that for us. I would love for you to do that. Right. And then it's also great for a researcher because, for myself, but also I've seen this in my team, is then they own the work. It's their idea, right? And so it's also motivating, to do more work, and they're more passionate when they're presenting, and if that's your initial, presentation to your stakeholders and their engagement with research, then it's great because they're seeing how much you really care and all that passion, and you're not stressed out because it was a last minute request and you have no idea what's going on, or anything like that. So yeah, I just encourage them to see opportunities, and as much as they can without pushing too hard,
Yeah.
suggest them.
Yeah, and that's really nice, and I think that really speaks to user researchers can be research requesters as well. I really love
Mhm.
that. Like we have plenty of knowledge of what ideally might should be going on. And I'm
Yeah.
I'm curious because I think a lot of people have a hard time finding those opportunities or almost like knowing how to ask the questions to find those opportunities because they kind of
Mhm.
have operated in this reactive mindset of people will come to me, people will come to me. I'm not used to actually looking and finding things. Are there any recommendations that you have for going out and finding those opportunities with your stakeholders, with your partners, or any sort of colleagues?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm not answering your question exactly, but I'll get there.
Okay.
So it's interesting because I think like it depends on, well, what I've noticed with my teams is it depends on where my researchers are coming from, like what their background is. So you're saying some people are used to getting requests. Like I see that with people who've worked in big companies or in academia, and it's just like this very clear path, and we know what we're doing. And people will come to me or they'll tell me if I'm doing it wrong, or and if you only have that environment, I think like that's where more of like, well, at least my job is to coach people into identifying and trusting their gut, because I think sometimes I've seen with these researchers who've had this background is they might think, oh, I should probably do this, or we should be doing this. They may not say it out loud. And so just kind of like building a little bit more of that confidence, and like, yeah, just because, they didn't ask you to do this, they don't actually know what they need, right? Like you're the expert, you're the researcher, you know what they need. And let's get them to a point where they can actually request. But right now they're not there yet, right? So like how can you support that effort? And like, that's totally different from somebody who's a freelancer, right? Like, and used to like working in a startup environment, or like, a more scrappy setting where they're constantly thinking about what can I do for the business? What can I do to like, spread awareness? What can I do to educate people on what I do? How can I have a bigger impact? All those things. So it depends on the individual, I think. But yeah, I mean, feel free to ask any other clarification questions because that's just where my head goes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that you can get really used to based on your environment, one kind of working model. So like always
Yeah.
receiving or always going out and getting. But I think that as researchers, no matter what the environment is, we should push ourselves to do the other side, right? So if you're so used to like receiving, maybe take some time to go talk to those stakeholders and say, what are you working on?
Right.
To get that information so that you can suggest. And what I also really love is that you said, trust that gut, trust that intuition, because oftentimes we're sitting there telling stakeholders not to do that. So I think that that kind of like
I
rubs off
know.
on us sometimes,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. But we're in that job for a reason. Like you were brought in to do a job for a reason. And yeah, I that's just another thing just thinking about like the skills I look for on my team is like I don't want somebody to have this like ego shield or like this defensiveness of like it's not this right way, like it's. And that in a startup environment is very valuable because, yeah, it's not going to be one right way, right? And like we're all building this thing together and are very passionate about what we're building, and everyone has good intentions. Like I try to assume that, especially in a startup, right? Like you're working hard in a startup, you're scrappy in a startup, like people have that passion and that drive, and so you can easily assume that they want you to succeed, right? And like you want to help them succeed. And so yeah, you got to just roll with what you got, and sometimes it's probably not your best work, or you're feeling really good about it. It's not your dissertation, it's not a thesis, it's not this gorgeous presentation, right? But the insights are equally as valuable, and you're giving them what they need when they need it. And that's all you can do.
Yeah, and I'm kind of happy that we're stepping a little bit away, it seems, from those like super polished presentations that like where we're spending hours and hours and hours like designing slide decks, and kind of stepping
Yeah.
away from that a little bit to like we're delivering the insights, and we're trying to deliver like de-risking and decision making. We're trying to help people, support people in their decisions, and it's really nice to
Mhm.
see that. And I'm curious if you've also seen that kind of shift given all the experiences that you've had.
Yeah, so like I think there's a time and a place for all of it. And so thinking about again being strategic in how we're presenting information, like I also have a design background and I sit in a design team. And so just bear that in mind, right? Like I want to represent design in that way and making things look and feel, you know, beautiful, but also easily digestible. Because, yeah, it can be overwhelming if you just get a Word doc of all this information, right? And so, how can we kind of chunk that up or, just use design principles to make sure that people can understand the information that we're delivering? And there's in the moment solutions, there's really quick, I need this, like we're doing these 5-second tests or something, or just like, which one is it? Like, we got to make a decision today. And then there's that strategic body of work that is like, who are our personas? Who are these people? Who are these agencies, companies, or who are our clients? Like, that type of work. And that's where I would say, like, that warrants a beautiful presentation or something, because this is going to live on and it's going to be used 5 years from now to reference where were we? Why did we do this? Right. And then those point in time things, like those quick Google Docs, or we use Figma a lot. We use FigJam all the time. And so, yeah, like those are also living documents, but you can see the history in those. And do we need to record the history? I don't know. Sometimes it makes sense to. But yeah, I just think about the different purposes for all of the types of deliverables.
Yeah, yeah, and matching those up to, as you said, the situation and probably the audience as well. The
Yes.
audience has
Yes.
such different needs.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, a product manager is going to be very different from a designer, is going to be very different from a developer. I have a lot of developers that are asking for, more information about personas and user journeys and things, which is so lovely.
Yeah.
And yeah, I want to make sure that they have what they need. And then there's the new VP that might have joined the company that is probably curious about your research, and they're going to be looking at it, right? Like, yeah, all those different types of people. So yeah, that's a good point about the audience.
Do you want to get all of your user research questions answered all while hanging out on your couch in sweatpants? No need to join any live webinars and hope that your question gets answered. No need to Google a million different things and sift through some scattered advice that you don't really know is valid or reliable. Not anymore. I know it sounds too good to be true, but I promise it isn't, because if you become a paid Substack subscriber, you get access immediately to a community filled with user researchers that I am in every single day answering questions. Not only can you hang out on your couch, feel less alone as a user researcher, and get all of your questions answered, not only by an expert, but by a bunch of other user researchers with amazing perspectives and experience, you can do all of that on your couch in sweatpants, and I will be alongside there with you every step of the way. So join my paid Substack, get immediate access, and we can relax together solving all of your user research problems. See you there.
I do want to go back a little bit to something that you said earlier, which was kind of thinking about that vision. So
Mm.
where do we want to be 6 months, a year, 3 years? And I'm curious because I think a lot of people working in startups or even maybe outside of startups can experience a lot of shifting priorities
Yes.
within teams. And I'm curious, how do you ground your team or how do you help your team with a vision when you do also have all these things shifting around you?
Yeah, the shift is that's a good question. I think, well, first it's looking for people who are comfortable in that environment. It's not for everyone. I totally get that, and being real about what it is. Like when you're going to join a startup, I think that it's important to be honest that like exactly like what you're saying, that priorities do shift and things change and there's a lot of turnover because there's point in time people, right? Or there's contractors that, budget's tight. And so we just need to have a contractor in and out. And I think, yeah, being honest about where we're at and which stage we're at and then what's next,
Mhm.
even if it's not, like I think it's really hard to think 3 years out in a startup. It's more like 6 months and quarter by quarter, but the just continuing to be very transparent with a team is so important as because it can feel like you're getting lost or oh, I thought we were talking about this thing when I joined and it's totally different now. And yeah, that happens, but also recognizing the journey. So it's important to ground a team and yeah, like last year at this time, remember what we were doing? And then, look how that got us to where we are now. And so what's next is going to be, this body of work, or now we have the opportunity to be more strategic because we've shown value in all this way, like all these ways, right? You've taken initiative with that project and shown them that you can do workflow mapping or like journey mapping or whatever it is, and they found value in that. And so now we have the opportunity to do more of that or revisit some of that work, right? But yeah, when it comes to the vision of the research team, that's also different than the vision of the company.
Mhm.
Usually the vision of the company stays the same. Like it's like, yeah. And so that's, I think, that's like our CEO's job is very grounding.
Yeah.
Trying to fit that into our vision as well is helpful. But I think like I focus on people as individuals and also what we want to build. Like, what do we want research to look like at this company? Where is our value? And that does change. So it's a collaborative effort. It's not just myself as the research leader. It's very much so like, what's my team seeing? And crafting that vision together. And I'd say like about every 3 months, it's some sort of, vision exercise where I'm getting my entire team together and just like reflecting, thinking about what's next, thinking about individually what they want to learn. And is there an opportunity to do that? All of that is happening every 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
So
Constant cycles of just evaluating and reevaluating, which I guess is like a product. We're like continuously iterating. So we can't
yeah,
really expect to like have the same static thing throughout our
no.
roles. Yeah. Especially if like the product is continuously changing, the market's continuously changing. Yeah. Cool.
Right.
And I'm curious because you said something really interesting before where it's like, okay, right now we have the opportunity to go a little bit more into like user journeys or to do
Mhm.
a little bit more strategic work. Do you ever have it happen where you're maybe in the middle of a project and it has to get completely dropped and the person has to completely shift to a new one?
I don't know about completely drop,
Mhm.
but there's definitely pauses.
Gotcha.
So when we are marking status, we'll say like we're blocked.
Yeah.
We wrote a research plan. For whatever reason, things aren't moving. So that's just in the vault right now. Right. Like, or we're going to shelve this project. Yeah, that does happen.
I think I wanted to kind of understand because people struggle with that quite a lot. Like they get really frustrated where they start down a path and then it's like, oh, but like this new feature that needs to be tested tomorrow.
I think a couple of things. So, one, I think it's my job as a research manager, leader of a department, to make sure that those things don't happen.
Yeah.
I know that they will happen, but minimizing that by making sure people understand initially like the priority so that we aren't supporting work that isn't top priority in a startup, right? Like there's always a ton of research that can be done. There's always more and deeper dives we can do. Like we can continue on forever and ever. But that priority and being very clear about what we need to do immediately should be clear so that type of thing does not happen. And if that is happening, then that signals to me that I need to do a better job, from the management perspective. But it also does happen where things get blocked, right? More so than dropped at least where we're at. But yeah, and when it does get blocked, I think it's like, as a manager, I have a conversation with the researcher on my team about it because you want to talk about it.
Yeah.
like one, why did this happen? Why is this happening? It can be frustrating. You've put a lot of work into something or you're really excited about running sessions and then they're supposed to be tomorrow or next week and then they're not happening, right? I think reflection is very important. So looking back at what made you so excited about the work, if there's something that we can do that's similar to the work, we'll do that later, or putting it in a queue of prioritization so we know that it will happen at least at some point. We're not just going to forget about it forever. Yeah. And then if something is another priority, also being honest about why it's another priority. Like, why did this other thing come up? Right. Because sometimes people will be like, this project's on fire, right? Like, it's like, I have to go over here now because something happened and it's on fire.
Yeah.
Well, again, like if we're doing our jobs right, we shouldn't have that many fires.
Yeah.
But if something is on fire and we need to put it out, right? Like, how did that get there? And then that's also a learning moment. So for my team, it's maybe, oh, this happened. Why did this happen? Oh, well, maybe it's because they didn't use research, right? Maybe it's because we gave them research before and it wasn't actually being properly utilized. And so then we missed something, right? And so that's still continuous learning and supporting that like researcher journey, that development. And so I still find value in those moments. I do understand they're frustrating and they've happened to me too. But trying to find more of that holistic understanding of why these things happened and how they can be prevented by us.
Yeah. And I think that's such a nice way to frame it because people, and I mean, I am one of those people who has been so frustrated by blockers or things changing.
Yeah.
And one of the best ways to combat that frustration and that negativity and that like cycle that we can get into is saying, why did it happen? Is like because that forces us to go from almost subjectivity to objectivity. So we're really like analyzing the situation and the problem rather than just focusing on like, I can't believe this happened again.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. I think that's a really nice way of looking at it. And one thing that I wanted to touch on is you had mentioned prioritizing. So making sure that you're only working on like the top priority projects. And although 50 million pieces of research can be done, we can only focus on the top priority. And I think that some people have a hard time with understanding what is priority. And I know this is probably a very difficult question to answer because it's so dependent on organizations and settings, but are there any tips that you have for people who are struggling with prioritizing research at their organization and then getting stuck kind of like doing everything or working on things that aren't that great to work on?
Well, so I think that the maturity of the organization definitely has a big impact on this, and how big your team is, where you sit, right? Like I sit under design, it's a UX org. There were other UX folks before me. and before the research team. So that helps a lot. That's totally different from being the only researcher
Mhm.
or, being more a junior level person trying to break in a startup. Like, so if we're thinking of a startup environment and priorities, like priorities change. Yes. I think if we have that strategic vision of what is going to not be point in time research, right? Like
Yeah.
what is going to support an entire product line? Like what is going to live on? That is always to me like a grounding priority. Is this work touching that? Is it in that pipeline? It might not always be, it might be kind of half and half right now as we're building our company. We're doing sort of like client work and what they need that's kind of more bespoke products, but we're also feeding that into a product line. And so we're double dipping almost every time we're doing a research study, but there's kind of this underlying current of priority. And so and those types of priorities I developed. So like the research team has its own priorities for supporting a product line, and that's been from collaboration, lots of conversations, and so I'm providing that direction to my team. But I know that sometimes that's not the case, right? Like sometimes it's just like, oh, I have a research request form and I'm the only person, and so I have to just do whatever is in priority, and that's totally different, right? It's priority to business goals, but also like in our case, it's what are users struggling with the most?
Yeah.
Is something not usable? Is something kind just so broken people aren't using it, right? That is a high priority for us. High priority for the business might look different, and it's a delicate balance between all of those things. But understanding the financial aspect of it is probably going to trump everything, and that's business,
Yeah.
and that's tough. But I think that's where the frustration can sometimes come in, where it's like, well, but I really want to do this for this user, like this is not a great experience, but ultimately we still need to keep the lights on. And so that's first. I encourage my team to collaborate very closely with their product managers
Mhm.
when it comes to priority. Priority should come out of every research study we do. So there should be a prioritization conversation. That's a collaboration between a lot of stakeholders, but I view it as primarily between research and product. And that relationship is tight to make that happen. Yeah.
Awesome. So we're actually at the end of our time.
Oh,
But I know before we go though, I would love to ask one more question. If there is one thing that you would recommend based on our conversation that people start doing if they're interested in doing more strategic research and getting into that mindset of being more strategic, do you have anything that you would recommend?
I think it depends on the person. Maybe it helps to like group this into like, is this a research manager who's trying to be more strategic, or like a leader of a research team?
Let's say an
Or
IC.
I see.
Hmm.
So I think what I said earlier about trusting your gut, if you're recognizing that we're not confident or you're not feeling confident in a decision that's being made because it's not grounded in research, that's usually a signal that we need to be more strategic in how we're approaching that. It's a combination of trusting your gut and then understanding where things are going. So, having those relationships with your stakeholders to understand their vision is very important. And so that helps you think ahead. It's not just this is a research request that I'm getting, or this is a point in time, research study to get us to the next thing. It's overall, I know that this product wants to achieve all of these things. How can I push, even if it's just this one study, to get closer to that vision? Maybe it's adding another research question, it's phrasing questions differently, it's choosing something that's repeatable or scalable, just being more thoughtful about that vision and not just the request that's right in front of you.
I love that. I think that's a really great tip. It's like really thinking about getting close to those stakeholders to understand their vision. And it's like, what is, even if it's a small thing to move those decisions forward and de-risk them or support them in some way, helping them to get there, even if it's incremental. It doesn't mean that you need to run and do like 6-week journey mapping
Oh no.
exercise. You could probably put out a survey that would help one of your stakeholders make a better decision towards their vision. And it's
Mhm.
okay to like look at it that way, because that's strategic. Yeah.
Something else I'd love to put in here that
Yeah.
I realize we didn't get to is just like the value of secondary or desk research.
Yes.
That's a huge part of being strategic as well, is like maybe we can't run, especially in B2B, like we can't reach all the users we want to reach. What body of work can we have and learn from? How can we ground our teams and foundational understanding if we don't have the time to do a specific type of study, or if it doesn't work out, or if we're blocked? That's another thing too. If you're feeling blocked, how else can you get that information? Is it possible to get other types of information? So anyway, doing a lot of that these days.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Amazing. Well, Brittany, thank you so much for your time today. It was amazing to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much. And like I said, big fan of your work. I love this podcast. I love that there are more podcasts for UX researchers. I think it's another great way to learn from experience, and I've benefited quite a bit in my own journey from user research podcasts. So yeah, really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Amazing. And thank you to everybody who is listening today. I really appreciate it. Just remember to subscribe, follow, do all those weird things that you do to always hear about things, whatever they are. And yeah, I will talk to you all soon. Thanks.